10 ultimate Survivor fans will get a chance to prove they have what it takes when they square off against 10 of their favorite players from the past.
Survivor Micronesia Fans vs. Favorites is always in the conversation as being one of the best seasons of Survivor ever. When a season has that large of a following behind it and a group of people that see it as the critical peak of Survivor, then it's just a matter of time for the theme of Fans vs. Favorites to return. And quite honestly, the premise itself is pure genius. Bring back 10 of your favorite players from seasons past to fight it out against 10 fans of the show. It really is every Survivor fan's dream, and that's why the entire theme itself was so compelling the first time around. The favorites are the players we are so invested in and love watching them play, meaning we are even more excited to see them return the second time. The fans are the complete opposite of that. The fans aren't the people we look up to, but instead they're the people we see ourselves in. They are the fans of Survivor. And combining the premise itself with the fact that the first iteration of Fans vs. Favorites was a huge critical success meant that Survivor fans across the world knew that this was going to be an amazing season that we would all remember. Well, at least that was my thought process going into this season.
39 days, 20 people, 1 Survivor.
Survivor Caramoan Fans vs. Favorites dropped February 13th, 2013, and with it, the Survivor community hit a new level of anticipation. This was the season fans have been waiting 5 years for, and coming off of the momentum of the widely successful original Fans vs. Favorites. Plain and simple, the original was adored by the community from the very beginning, but this would not be the case this time around, as Fans vs. Favorites 2 just felt completely different from the very beginning. Well, at first glance, it's pretty easy to get excited for a season called Fans vs. Favorites. When you take a closer look, it is easy to notice the many flaws of the season that ultimately result in it completely flopping.
It's really amusing to watch other people react to Philip because I lived 37 days with him and I know how he gets.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Survivor Retrospective, a daily series where we look back at different seasons of Survivor every day leading up to the premiere of Survivor Season 41. Today we're going to be breaking down this incredibly flawed season of Survivor and also doing a little rewrite of how the season could have done a little better. Now, we're getting really close to 500 subscribers, so please help the channel out and hit the subscribe button. Also, make sure to watch all the way to the end of the video where I will be revealing my final ranking of Survivor Caramoan. We've got a lot to cover though, so let's just get into it.
I'm waiting the whole week long for Wednesday night at 8 to arrive so I can turn on CBS and see what's in store.
After this video being completed and we finish talking about this season, we will officially be done talking about the dark age of Survivor. This is easily the worst stretch of seasons in the show's history, with the only shining light being yesterday's video where we discussed how Survivor Philippines saved the franchise. But if you really think about it from a large scale perspective, the general consensus from the community is that the rest of these seasons deserve to be placed in a trash bin. We have Nicaragua, Redemption Island, South Pacific, One World, and this season right here with Survivor Caramoan is no exception. The main issue that makes this season so flawed comes from the awful casting choices that were made, and really, if you start to think about it, every main issue that people have with this season can be fixed fairly easy if a better cast was put together from the start of the game. Do me a favor real quick and let me know without cheating how many members of this 20-person cast that you can name right off the top of your head. My guess would be you can name a majority, if not all of the favorites, and then maybe 5 of the fans. Like, the cast we get this season is just plain awful, and I think I'm giving the favorites tribe way too much credit here. Trust me, most of these favorites should not be considered favorites. They get so much screen time this season that the producers are trying to trick you into thinking they should be favorites. I will walk through all the questionable casting choices a little bit later, but for now we need to touch on the other issues with the season. People leaving the game in an awful pre-merge. I would argue that the pre-merge of Survivor Caramoan is borderline unwatchable for how painful and boring it is to get through. Episode after episode, we have to sit through boring vote-offs and we are shown to not care about the fans tribe at all. To make matters even worse, we have medical evacuations in the pre-merge, with Shamar and Brandon being removed from the game. And when you add in Eric being evacuated on day 36 as well, then that means we have 3 people this season leave the game without being voted out. This isn't always considered to be a bad thing, however, as we see the same sort of thing happen in the original Fans vs. Favorites. But this season is filled with unlikable personalities, so it comes off way better there than right here when Brandon, Hans, and Shamar end up getting pulled from the game.
How's that landing with you, Shamar?
I don't know what to say.
That's the perfect spot to start discussing the many awful casting decisions that are made this season, and let's start with Brandon Hans. I want to make this as brief as possible, but I'm really not sure how Brandon got through the cracks and made it onto this season. It was clear from day one on this season that he was unstable and not mentally prepared to play Survivor. And I know there's some sort of physical and mental test that the players need to successfully complete before being allowed to play the game. So casting team, come on, you are better than this. From a Survivor perspective and a strategic perspective, this is awful for the show. For the safety of Brandon's tribe mates, this was an awful decision. And for the safety of Brandon himself, this was an awful decision. But even after saying all of that, I still think that the drama if you can even call it that was produced here was one of the highlights of the pre-merge, and at least gave us something entertaining. Literally none of Brandon's moments this season is what I look for in a Survivor season, but this pre-merge is one of the worst of all time, and it at least gave us something to talk about.
Hey Phil, here's a reason to vote me out, you little... Huh? With your stealth all Russ book, huh? Come on, bitch!
Why do 3 of the girls in the fans tribe look the exact same? Why did we bring back someone who was the first voted out? Who is Julia? Philip is so over the top and hard to watch this season with Stealth R Us. Brenda gets really dark and evil, and Dawn doesn't really add anything to the season. Sherri becomes a complete ghost, and you forget that Eric is even on the season for most of the time watching. But there are 2 redeeming moments throughout the entire season.
They all voted for me. You can tell. That's what that whole story was about. Give it to me. We're in good shape.
Malcolm is now so notorious in the Survivor community with hidden immunity idols that if a Survivor fan ever thinks of Malcolm playing Survivor, the next thing that comes to your mind is going to be his many hidden immunity idol plays. I mentioned in yesterday's video on Survivor Philippines how he is my favorite player of all time, and that really gets put on full display here with the moves he makes at Tribal Council. Now I would say he might have caught a bad case of big move-itis and decided to go for the flashy plays over the smart plays, but the flashy plays are just so much fun to watch here and add some spice to a really bad season. We see the formation of the 3 amigos with Reynold, Eddie, and Malcolm, and we get some crazy moments like convincing Reynold to play his idol for Malcolm in front of everyone during Tribal Council, and of course the mind-blowing moment when Reynold won immunity and Malcolm decided to give one of his immunity idols to Eddie and decided to keep the other one for himself, and then goes on to tell the entire tribe that all of them are safe and they're throwing all their votes on Philip. Let's roll the clip. After the brief highlight reel of Survivor moments, we get right back into this tough to watch season as we see Cochran maneuver his way to the end of the game in a dominating fashion. It's amazing to see the growth that Cochran was able to achieve from the start of South Pacific to the end of the game here, but it's just so obvious that he's going to be the winner that it takes the awesome factor away from him achieving the perfect game.
The winner of Survivor Fans versus Favorites, Cochran!
The changes we need to make this season are all based on casting decisions. First of all, we need to cast actual superfans of Survivor for the fans tribe. Like, is it really too much to ask for the fans tribe of Survivor to be people who've seen more than one episode of the show? And let's keep fixing the fans tribe by giving them a stronger narrative during all portions of the game. We need to understand their stories and care about them a little more. I don't care how popular the favorites tribe is, we need more screen time from the fans. Oh yeah, I forgot. This tribe of favorites isn't popular at all anyway. Let's replace Dawn, Philip, Brandon, Francesca, and Brenda. While the edit tries their best to hide it, Brenda was not playing the game this season at all and would go off crying most days from missing her boyfriend. I understand Survivor was attempting to make new all-stars, so let's keep the favorites tribe at strictly one-time players to never win. But I see no reason why we can't go further back in the seasons to find actual favorites. This really is the perfect end to the dark age era of Survivor, as everything that is wrong with this era is highlighted and placed on full display right here in Survivor Caramoan Fans vs. Favorites.
It turns out Brandon's alternative to telling us he was going to quit was he was going to burn the shelter down and or pee in our beans and rice.
Caramoan is a horribly flawed season. There is really nothing that exists on paper that makes more mistakes, but I think our changes would be enough to take it to a B or even A tier season. Now as it is, I will also acknowledge that not every episode is bad. We have some of the most entertaining tribal councils of all time once we get to the merge, and you need to appreciate what Cochran was able to pull off with the perfect game. It's not something I enjoy watching, and I never tell myself, oh, I'm gonna go back to watch Survivor Caramoan, but there are some iconic moments here no matter how you spin it, and I'll often find myself going back and watching individual moments from this season instead of watching the season as a whole. The issue comes into play when looking at everything else the season has to offer. You need to ask yourself, why? Why do you need to watch these players? I'll answer that for you right now. You don't need to watch these players, and instead look up Survivor Caramoan highlights on YouTube and you'll be good to go.
I've been bored to death, so the majority of my days have been sitting on the beach, waiting for food to be fed to me.
Once again, I want to give Outcast Originals a quick shout out for helping me out and sending me a replica of the Heroes vs. Villains Hidden Immunity Idol. I highly recommend checking out their Survivor props, and I'll put a link down in the description to their store. And of course, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel with the bell turned on, as I'm posting daily Survivor videos just like this. And please comment down below with what other changes you can think of that would improve this season even more. My final rating for Survivor Caramoan Fans vs. Favorites is a 3.0 out of 10. F tier.